Well, hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Purposeful Marketing Podcast. Aaron and Kevin here. Again, if you're listening for the first time, what we're trying to do is Performance Marketer Roundtable, where we kind of discuss the topics that matter most to us in the performance marketing space. We try to deconstruct them, break them down. You get our expertise, our thoughts, maybe our questions. We don't know everything. And again, I'm bringing Kevin on from Gorilla 76, now as a senior performance marketer. So I want to congrats him on that. Last time we talked, he wasn't. So love to see the growth.
Thanks, Aaron.
That's my man. Okay. So we're going to kind of do this as a series, and kind of, as Kevin and I just talked, is the first episode you heard us kind of talk about what is the role, because it was kind of new title, but the activity you're doing is something that Kevin and I have been doing for years in our marketing career from probably day one, and just explaining how it's different now and what you need to do differently. I think this one is going to be going more high level strategy as far as how should you think about channel strategy as a performance marketer. And when I say channel, I'm talking about paid search versus paid social. We'll certainly break into some of the platforms, talking about Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, Google ads, maybe Bing ads will make an appearance. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But we really wanted to, again, give our take on, if you're a performance marketer, like what should you think about paid search? What should you think about paid social, and then go from there. So I just talked a lot. Kevin, I'm just going to give you the floor a little bit if you want to tell us which one you want to start with, or maybe set the floor for whatever one.
Sure. So we have all these different platforms. We have paid social, we have paid, Facebook, LinkedIn, paid search, we got Google. And it's interesting because a lot of times people just want to kind of throw everything out there on every platform and not really question why they're doing it, or even have a different strategy for each individual channel. So, I mean, it's pretty simple, right? It's like paid search is you're capturing demand. Like when somebody is with high intent, like searching for you or a product or service that you offer, you're showing them the ad in the feed where they're searching. And then on paid Facebook or LinkedIn, paid social, like you're serving an ad to people's news feeds because they're within like interest targeting or demographic targeting that you're targeting. Like they're not necessarily looking to purchase that minute, but they're still seeing your ad. You're building awareness, consideration. So we call that like demand generation. So pretty simple. Like that's how we approach it from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a good synopsis. And I even like to simplify it even more sometimes, where it's paid social. That's the channel where I'm going to educate and distribute value and just get in front of my customers. Mm-hmm. Paid search, when someone's ready to buy, I'm going to make it easy on them and make sure that they have what they need to have that buying conversation. I think I do want to dive into capture demand and create demand a little bit more. One thing we're doing is kind of trying to create a new framework to think about. And I'll just kind of offer that and maybe get your feedback, Kevin, because we notice that too in our space of trying to create and capture demand. But what we're really into is like building relationship conversations. So we almost feel like capturing demands a little too strongly, right? So we've actually tried to kind of change our processes. So we lean more not to getting someone actually into a sales conversation, but getting someone to just have a conversation. And then we do a lot of different activity after that conversation. Now, with create demand, I think that's the one that is the newest framework to think about for people. I think capture demand we'll get to next, and it's a little more straightforward. But create demand, again, what do you see every day? You're working with clients, like how do you help them understand this? Or what do you do to make sure that we perform correctly when we're trying to create demand?
Right. So think of it as there are a lot of people out there who fall within your customer bucket, right? They may not know you exist. And you can reach them on platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn, where they are spending hours of their time every single day. So you're really just getting your information in front of them. You're getting their attention, right? And it's like letting them know that you exist, that you can help solve their problem, and that you can eventually create that demand where when they do need your product or service, you're the one they think of. And you can get to that through a process, like a process of, um, customer research, and how do you actually shape your ads? Like, how do you shape your messaging? That's a whole other thing. But that's how I think about it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great explanation. And just to add to it, because I was literally just talking to founder Joel Sullivan at Gorilla 76 this week about this concept, because he had a post talking about, at face value, what you're doing is just trying to get in front of your customers every day. What LinkedIn, what Facebook allows us to do is get real tight and granular on who those people are, and we can actually see the numbers, right? So in his example, I think he was talking about, like, could you just get your message in front of 50,000 people every day? Well, great. That's what paid social allows us to do, and that's that creating demand aspect. I also love this visual that I've seen other marketers talk about, is like breaking down the audience sizes over time with pictures. So like maybe you see 80,000 people in a stadium, right? What does that look like? What does 100 people in a room look like? Well, guess what? With paid social, we get to talk to those people every single day and make sure they understand our value, make sure we educate them about the product and the business and the service model, because there's so many choices to make in your life. And we're not just talking about B2B business choices. We're talking about, what should you eat? What should I have for breakfast? What kind of clothes should I wear? Mm-hmm. So if you're not creating demand for your product day in and day out, people just don't know. And I think that's like really what I'm trying to stress with create demand is, again, as marketers, we should get our message out there, get in front of people, right time, right place, and do it repeatedly over time and get better at it. Anything to add before we kind of talk more about capture demand?
Yeah, I love the visual of the football stadium that Joe's been using, because I think of it as, like, say you do have an 80,000 seat stadium, and you are basically you're not reaching all 80,000 of those people in one day, right? It, like, the way the ad platforms work, it kind of builds that up. You're reaching a certain amount every day, but say you are going to reach that many people overall, it's more like, as people are walking into the stadium, say you get to hand your flyer or talk to the first 1,000 people as they walk into the stadium. And then the next day you do the next 1,000 and the next 1,000. So it's like you're building up a whole, audience one by one. And I think everything else he says, like, illustrates it wonderfully.
So, and that's such a great analogy, Kevin. And the other one I've heard is you're on a highway and you get to see the same billboard by this company every single day. And like, we're almost using the traditional to explain the digital, but because it works, right? There's some psychology behind it. So the one thing I do want to stress with create demand, specifically as a performance marketer, is it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And you have to be able to articulate that to your clients, maybe articulate that to your internal team if you're an in-house marketer, that what we do today, we're going to hand that flyer out for 6 to 9 months, right? Because it takes a very long time for these decisions to happen in B2B. So we're going to make sure we're going to be there every day, bare minimum, right? I'll give you a chance to talk about time, and we can go to capture demand, because I know we'll talk about time throughout the rest of this conversation, but specifically with create demand, like, how do you handle the concept of time with your clients and yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, on paid social, it's funny how with e-commerce brands or like direct to consumer, there have been times where they've had success with paid social, almost like Google ads. It's like, put money in, get money out, like, run the math machine. What's my ROI? And that's kind of been the macro conversation around it. So it is interesting, like, heading into these conversations, even with B2B companies, explaining to them, like, yeah, this really might be like a 6-month thing before anybody is even entering like the consideration phase for your product. But once you're there, it's like, once you start building that momentum, it's really, really powerful, because you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are within your exact like target, that are now aware of you that were not before. Like that shouldn't be underestimated. Like maybe you haven't closed a sale yet, even though you've spent X amount of money on your marketing, but you're basically putting yourself like 6 months ahead of the next person who hasn't been building that awareness.
It's such a vital point. And again, if you don't start the awareness today, you're not going to have it tomorrow. And I love the flyer analogy. Let's take this is you're in a stadium, 80,000 people are handing out that flyer. Guess what? They're going to go home. They're going to tell their family. Guess what? Their family's going to tell their family. And it keeps going down the line, right? Mm-hmm. That's that compounding amplification of the awareness. But for most of the companies we work with is if you don't start, you can't get there. And that's why that time conversation becomes convoluted and hard. Now, when speaking about time, capturing demand is a little easier to understand this concept because you get some immediate gratification by capturing demand. So when we say capture demand, we're talking about paid search, specifically Google ads for most of our clients and some Bing ads sprinkled in. But what we're trying to do, again, is we're trying to bid on the keywords that have intent to buy. That is a little different from last couple of years, but we have been doing the same approach for a long time. But what's important, again, is when someone is ready to buy because they've gone through a create demand program, they've seen all the ads, they've seen the messaging, they know they're in the consideration phase, as Kevin used, like they want to raise their hands and ready to buy. Use Google ads to make sure that you're getting those kind of people in front of the right searches. So they're in the right landing page to have the right kind of sales conversation. Like that's how I would kind of explain it. And I'll do it a little more simply is, again, someone wants to buy, they go search on Google, you show up right there. That's what we're trying to do with capture demand, make sure that they have those kind of conversations. Anything you want to add to the capture demand?
Totally. Yeah, like when running paid search ads, you want to have that in there as well. Like even though we talk a lot about demand generation, you need to also be there when people are ready to buy, or if they're more serious, right? Like it's sort of like omni-channel, you know, you're catching up, they're learning about you on Facebook or LinkedIn, and then they go to Google to figure out who you are, and then boom, there you are. Like your ad is right at the top. So, and the thing with that too is like with B2B, it's not always, even if somebody is searching for a really high intent like keyword they're looking to buy, they may not make that decision immediately either. Like we're not necessarily looking to run a whole math like arbitrage of we spent this amount, we got this many leads. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of where you want to be with it, like 6 months or like a year into your campaign. But when you're just starting out, you're just making sure you are where people are looking for you. And I'd love to hear more from you too, Aaron, like where you said, we think of it as like relationship building. Mm-hmm. It's not even necessarily like capturing a lead.
Totally. So yeah, let me explain that because I'm gonna get a little bit tactical here. And that's fine. That's what the show is. So essentially we are using create demand and capture demand to get people to the website. Where I differentiate is it doesn't concern me as much to get someone to fill out a high intent landing page. Actually, what I want them to do is DM people specifically on LinkedIn. So that's what we've done is to try to make that more visible on the website. So again, when someone comes in, they have direct access to the person that they want to talk to have the sales conversation. Another way to do this I've seen people do that is probably effective is put the Calendly link or a calendar booking type of widget on the website so someone can book directly to who they want to talk to. Again, what we're trying to emphasize is not the math arbitrage, as Kevin put, is I'm just trying to get someone to the relationship as quick as possible. Everything in create demand is going to help improve that relationship conversation to turn into a sales conversation. But I think it's my job as a performance marketer, and our model is just to get people to relationships so quick, because like that's where we think you can scale, right? Is you have more relationships over time, you're gonna have more revenue over time. So that's just slightly different, but I would say you're still running the same motions as you are in capturing create demand.
I love that. It's because I think of it as whether you're running paid search or paid social, like you need to eliminate as much friction as possible for that user, for the person to actually get to you. And so if you're doing that quite literally by DMing them
Mhm.
or giving them your calendar, I mean, that's just the final step of that whole process, right? Like you gave them a good landing page, you gave them a nice ad
Mhm.
with very clear like action that they can take to learn more. They click on it, they get to your landing page. You have a nice form, you have information for them, and then once they fill that out, that could end up bottlenecking though, where if you don't actually get in touch with them, so
Mhm.
finishing that process is a huge step.
So, and let's continue because there is kind of some human pressure when I do this approach with DMs on LinkedIn. Is instead of a form going into a CRM that someone's going to work later, it's someone's DMing the sales team directly, and it's like, are you
Mhm.
not going to answer that, right? It's just putting a little bit of pressure to have that relationship conversation quicker. I think this will be a good segue into talk about kind of how capture demand and create demand is different specifically for the verticals that Kevin and I work in, which is industrial, manufacturing, medical services, medical device, and professional services. Again, what is important with performance marketers here is you can master the actions of create and capture demand, but what we need to help our team with is that narrative, that storytelling. I think that's where performance marketers in our space, again, if you want to ask Kevin and I questions after this, we can help you with it. That's where we're going to excel because, again, the buying cycles are so long. And again, a lot of our clients, they don't have the math arbitrage. It's not even there, right? So we're starting from ground zero. So therefore, telling the narrative and building the narrative over time is super important. And something like I just explained becomes very important because what that's actually going to do is make my numbers look worse, right? Like I'm not going to have as many high intent landing page form fills over time. But what I'm going to have is the more the qualitative aspect of and the narrative of these right people at the right time DM'd my client directly. They see that, right? They're going to be like, oh man, this program is working. I understand what we're doing because they're coming directly to me. So I'm going to kind of reframe so you can answer it again, Kevin, is like, again, how is B2B different when we're talking about paid search, paid social versus other businesses?
Right. The way you described it is exactly right. Like it's more, you need to, in your first 6 months at least, you need to look at things that are directionally happening. Are like, are you getting DMs? Like if that is how you're connecting with the user, are you can look at your paid social ads. Are you getting reactions? Are people liking it that are within your target audience, right? Like it's more about, are we reaching the right people at the right time? And it could be 6 months where you spend all of your ad budget and you don't actually close a sale from it, and that's really weird and like difficult to wrap your head around. But if you think about it, it's like these sales cycles are just so long for a lot of these B2B industrial companies that even if somebody does see your ad on day one and they are interested, it could be a long time before they ever actually close. So there are plenty of things that you can look at though on demand capture, demand creation side that tell you are things working or not.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying, the DMs, who are the people that are actually contacting you? Who are the people who are liking your ads? Um, and that can kind of help you start shaping a narrative. There's even, not to get too tactical, but there's even, things that you can look at in Google Analytics
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. But I think it's just, what I'm getting at is take those first 6 months and let it cook.
Yeah, that's almost the most sage advice we can say is just like give it time. Um, okay, I think we'll pivot into kind of the last question, and Kevin, you kind of said it, like understanding like what works, right? I think the pitfall for most performance marketers are just marketing teams are doing this for the first time is not thinking about how the channel strategy plays out in the actual ad account. So I'll explain paid search and I'll pass over to paid social for Kevin. But paid search often I find is there is no channel strategy. So what happens with paid search, right, is Google tells you these are the keywords to bid on, and then you go bid on them. However, if we need to tell a narrative, we really need to think about how that account is set up and the strategy within it. The most simplest way I can explain it is just maybe bucketing and categorizing your high intent keywords into products, services, industry keywords, brand, non-brand, just that approach alone and the thinking behind it is something you need to apply. So then you can document that narrative over time. And we'll do a deeper episode on paid search, but I just want to sprinkle that thought there now is whatever your your whole channel strategy is, and we're saying it's create demand, it's capture demand within the ad platform, you also need to make sure that that does what you want it to do. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, when Kevin said, let it cook, in 6 months, you weren't cooking, right? You're just putting ingredients in a bowl. That's it. So I'll throw it over to you at paid social, Kevin, if you want to kind of talk through that.
Totally. So it's great with paid social. To me, it's really all about the targeting, especially on LinkedIn. You can target job titles, right? Like it's so cool in B2B because it's like we know who we want to reach. Even though the audience is small, like we know the people who sometimes we even know their names, and it's like we can put in job titles, we can put in business names. We can build a really, really targeted audience. And then Facebook, it's a little bit different. Their targeting is not quite as good, but there's tools you can use like metadata or things to build a list off of LinkedIn, but it's pretty much all the same. I will say you kind of want to think of each channel, Facebook versus LinkedIn. One is when people go on LinkedIn, they're like in a business mindset. When they're on Facebook, it's more just general life. It's like oxygen, right? But strategy wise, think of it like we've already been saying, almost like passing a billboard. Like you are looking to reach people as they're scrolling through their feed and give them information that's going to help them. And I think it's really cool in B2B as well. You can serve somebody an ad of like a piece of equipment that they're probably not going to see every day in their LinkedIn feed. So when they do see it, they're like excited and they want to like the post, right? So I think of it as like an advantage. Like B2B is difficult, or that's the perception. But man, it can be really like simple if we don't make it too complicated.
Heck yeah, and we'll end it on that. And I think what Kevin and I want to do is make it simple for you. So ask us some questions. We'll do it on the next couple of episodes, but specifically what we're doing is we started high level, what our role is, moving into high level channel strategy. We want to break the ad platforms down, probably do LinkedIn next, maybe Facebook, moving to paid search. Then I want to get tactical. We'll do like a retargeting episode, talk about creative messaging. We're going to do it all because what we want to help you do in B2B is make it easier. So appreciate you listeners. Thank you for always giving your feedback and insight. I'll throw this out there pretty soon in the next week or two, and we'll keep rolling with Performance Marketing Roundtable. Appreciate y'all.